Welcome to the Career Creator Podcast, where we highlight the stories of everyday women moving through fear to make changes in their life and career. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Rachel. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Career Creator Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel, and today we are switching things up a little bit. So a piece of feedback that I have consistently gotten from multiple people is that they would like to hear more about my career story and my journey and why I started the podcast. So I had a friend who mentioned the same thing, and I said, hey, would you want to interview me? You're great at asking questions. I think you'd be good at this. What do you think? And she was very kind and said yes. So my friend Kindra Wray is with us today, and she will be taking over as the host, and I will be the guest. Hi, Kindra.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing well today, and I will let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, first of all, Rachel, thank you for having me. We go way, way back, all the way back to 2013. So can't believe we've known each other that long. I am currently a talent solutions consultant working for a food manufacturer supporting supply chain. So essentially what I do is manage all of our internal staffing moves. I help coach managers on how to assess and select talent. Previous to that role, I had experience in external recruiting, campus recruiting, and that is how I met Rachel at my current employer. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm currently living in Minneapolis, and I'm just so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for offering to be the volunteer host today. I'm excited for everyone to hear all your great question asking skills and learn a little more about you.
Awesome. So why don't we just dive right in, Rachel, with a very fun, light question that I like to ask folks. What was your very first job?
Yes, I will give you so I had an unofficial first job when I was 15. My friends were working and I was younger than everyone and I wanted to work. So there was a couple at my church who owned a wing restaurant and I got a work permit so I could be a waitress there. So I was a waitress and it was so much fun. I remember I got a tip for $6 one time. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I thought it was the best thing ever. But I also had to do a lot of the cleaning and vacuuming and cleaning the bathrooms and all that. So I did a little bit of everything. And then when I turned 16, my official first job was at a local pizza place in Arkansas where I'm from, Gino's Pizza. And I worked at the cash register.
Awesome. Rachel, knowing everything I know about you, I think you would be a fabulous waitress. Myself, on the other hand,
Thank you.
Not so much. But I'm sure you learned a lot of valuable skills from those first roles, which then leads me to my next question is, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Even before you got to college, what did you say? This is what Rachel's going to do with her life.
Yeah, you'll notice a theme here. Every answer is going to be a little complicated. I'm like, well, my official answer that I gave everyone is that I wanted to be a doctor because I felt like that's what they wanted from me. And the real thing I wanted to do, I was really into writing in magazines and design. So in my mind, I wanted to work for a magazine and be an editor in chief. But the official answer I gave people was a doctor.
So plot twist, a doctor, but editor in chief. Why not just come out and say, I want to be an editor in chief?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a great reason why at that age I decided it was a good idea to say doctor. I think it's because a lot of people, I was a pretty good student in school, made good grades, and people would say, oh, you're smart, be a doctor. I'm like, there's smart people in every profession. So I think it made people feel good and proud and it made sense to them. So it was easier than trying to explain how I was going to be a writer. And there was no clear career path. I didn't know any writers in my life personally. I was from a somewhat smaller town and I didn't have a lot of examples of what that would look like to be a writer, which I did intern for a magazine in college. But yeah, I just felt like doctor, there was a clear path. People liked it. It made sense.
Absolutely. I totally get that. Growing up, I always thought I was going to be a lawyer. There are still points in my career right now where I said, maybe I should go to law school. But I feel like maybe it's the generation or how we grew up, but it felt like lawyer, a doctor, a teacher. And to your point, picking a career that you didn't already know someone that was in or have a defined career path can be a little complicated. I know things are much different now, but I certainly understand that.
Yeah, and it's a little scary at the time. You don't know. What if you mess it all up? Well, now I know that's okay. But what if you mess it all up and you made the wrong decision? So I'm curious, how did you arrive at your major then?
At some point, I couldn't even tell you when I decided that I was not going to be a lawyer and I got to college, I was taking accounting classes in high school and I really enjoyed them and then took like more of the advanced accounting. So I originally went into college knowing that I was going to go into business and said, I like accounting. I am
Ah.
going to do accounting. And then guess what happened? I had my first internship at the end of my freshman year in accounting and I hated it.
Oh
Not
no.
because I didn't do well with the numbers, I
Yeah.
absolutely did. It's funny that I recognize this about myself, but manager at the time also recognized this about me is that, yeah, you just have a little bit too much personality, a little bit more social than here in this accounting role, being an individual contributor. And I know not every role is like that, but it was
Hmm.
just like, yeah, this isn't going to give me the satisfaction. Like,
Yeah.
at some point, I thought, I'm just too much for these folks. And again, I'm stereotyping here,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I was just like, I enjoyed the work, but it didn't give me pleasure. So when I went back my sophomore year, I was like, all right, I'm not going to be an accountant. Still going to be business, but we're going to figure this out.
Okay. And I love that we're talking about this because I've never heard that story about you. So I'm learning all sorts of new things. And we have that in common. So I did an accounting, it was called Accounting Career Awareness Program at the University of Arkansas in high school. And I loved it. And I thought I wanted to be an accountant for a hot second too. So that's funny that we both wanted to be accountants at some point.
Yes, yes. And then eventually, I figured it out. I found my groove. But hey, shout out to all the accountants. It was just not my jam.
Yeah. And that's good to know. I'm glad you figured it out after freshman year, and it wasn't when you got your first job. So you were able to kind of test it out in college.
Absolutely. When I was doing a lot of campus recruiting, that was one of the things that I said to a lot of the freshmen and sophomores, hey, we all come in with this idea of what we think we might want to do. But then you start getting into your curriculum, your courses, maybe you have internships or externships in that area, and you decide maybe that's not it. But that's okay. That is the whole point. College is
Yeah.
where you figure it out. I mean, even as an adult at 42, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be. And that's okay. That is
Yeah.
absolutely okay.
Yeah. I agree. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up either. So it
I,
takes time.
that agreed. So now, Rachel, you decide you are going off to college. So tell us a little bit about where you went to school and what you majored in, how you chose that major.
Yeah. So I went to Duke University for undergrad. And I said, I was from Arkansas, grew up in the same town my entire life. So I knew I wanted to go to the East or West Coast and I wanted to get far away from home. I just thought it was fun, the idea of moving to a place that was a little bigger than my hometown. And I liked Duke because it had a great blend of academics and athletics. And I wanted to do great schoolwork and have great academic opportunities, but I also wanted to have a lot of fun in college. So that's why I picked it. And when I got there, they had this book of all of the majors. And I don't remember what the book was called, but it had all the majors and all the courses. So I did what any normal 18-year-old would do. And I picked, the pre med, or I don't remember, was it chemistry, biology, one of the science majors for pre med, and mapped out all my courses for all 4 years.
Now, that is dedication. I can't say that I did that.
Oh, so it gets worse. So I mapped it out and I took my first chemistry class and hated it. I didn't like chemistry. I didn't like my calculus class. And I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor. I shadowed a doctor at the hospital, an oncologist, and I just didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. So I said, okay, back to the drawing board. And I went back to this book and mapped out like 5 different majors because I could not decide what I wanted to do. So I just took classes in every major. Like it made no sense. In sophomore year, I think it was second semester, they said, Rachel, my advisor's like, Rachel, you have to declare a major now. And I was like, I don't know. And I looked and I had taken, I think, close to half of the classes for the psych major just out of natural interest. So I said, okay, I'll be a psych major. That's how I chose a major. It was not a very precise plan.
And that's okay. And I'm sure you are not alone. But in the end, it all worked out. So now you decided that you are going to be a psych major. What did you plan to do with that degree?
yeah. So then everyone was like, you're a psych major. So what are you going to do? Are you going to be a therapist? Are you going to go into higher ed? You're going to do research? Nope. I wanted to work in business. But at Duke, they don't have business majors for undergrad. So a lot of people who are interested in business become econ majors, which I also took intro to econ and did not. I think I made a C in that class. I did not do well. So I knew I did not want to be an econ major and make horrible grades all throughout college. So a lot of psych majors actually are going to business too there. And so for me, I was like, this is 4 years. I want to take classes I'm interested in. And then the work part, I will figure that out. And I volunteered at the Career Center all throughout undergrad. So I knew a little bit about like resumes and how to interview and talk about your skills. So I decided that even though I wanted to be in business, I didn't need a major that was one for one, that gave me all the business experience because I figured I could figure that out on the job and learn it when I actually started working.
I actually love that, Rachel, what you just said there. And I don't think a lot of people think about it that way. They go in and they pick their major and then what they want to do with their career and have it all mapped out. But you did the opposite. You just said, nope, I'm going to take this major because this is what I want to do. These are the courses that I'll enjoy and I'll find my career. Now, there may be some parents that are listening to this going, oh gosh, don't let my college kid hear this. There's a lot, a lot of money involved in this college tuition. But I think it's really worth noting that, especially in business, unless you want to go into something like finance, where we're looking for finance or econ majors, like there's some flexibility in business depending on what area you're in. So I appreciate that you picked up on that very early in your career and then volunteering and just finding things that bring you passion. So now you're trying to figure out what you want to do in business. What led you to your first job post-college? How did you end up there?
I was thinking about what areas I wanted to focus on. And at first, I thought maybe marketing because I took a psychology of consumers class and loved it. So marketing felt like a good fit there. And also, I was in a program where you got a mentor, and my mentor worked in HR. So I was thinking about, oh, maybe HR. As a little girl, I would draw like fashion designs, and I was very into fashion. I thought it would be really great to work on the business side of a large retailer. And we had a few that came to campus to recruit. So I ended up applying for jobs that were on either the buying route or merchandise planning. And I got a role in merchandise planning. And part of the reason for that was, in college, of course, because I do nothing by the book or on a straight path. Instead of getting business internships, as I should have done in college, I decided I'm going to volunteer every summer. And I did do an internship at a local magazine one summer. But for most part, I volunteered every summer because I said, I'm going to have to work the rest of my life. I want to do other things while I can. I had no internship experience when it came time for me to get my first job. I had to get really creative in how I showcased my skills. And the feedback I got from a lot of employers was, we think you're capable of the analytical work, but your resume and your experience doesn't show us you had those skills. So I was determined to get an analytical role because I didn't want that to be a blocker for me in my career. So I went and became a merchandise planner, which is a very analytical role in the retail world.
Good for you. And I know as somebody who came from the campus recruiting world, a lot of employers do look for, internship experience, or there's a lot of times I coach people to say my recruiting team is less about where you worked, but what transferable skills can you bring to the organization based off what you've learned in that job. Like,
yes,
I don't care if you worked at a fast food restaurant or as you talked about waitressing, think about all those skills that you gained from those roles. How can you transfer it in the interview? Because I think to me, that's the most important piece is looking for that transferable skills. Everything doesn't have to fit in a perfect little box or a perfect round hole. So kudos to you for that. So now you are at the point where you are at your first job. Is it what you expected it to be? Is it what the recruiter sold you on?
No. And it's funny because I think I may have deleted it by now, but at the time, it's funny. I went back and looked. I tweeted, got my dream job. And I really thought it was my dream job. Looking back, no, it was not my dream job. I actually, within the first 2 months, hated it. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. What have I done with my life? I worked so hard. Everyone said, good grades, go to a good college, then you'll get a good job. I did all the things. And then I was like, this is what you get at the end. I felt like I was sold a scam. I felt like it was a lie I was sold and they scammed me because the package at the end of that rainbow was not what I wanted.
Well, sometimes that happens and you recognize that. So, was it more about just the type of work that you were doing, or what wasn't bringing you fulfillment where you had to say, all right, I'm out. I got to start looking for the next opportunity?
It was a combination of things. I think a large part of it was that coworkers, I realized, didn't really like their job. So a lot of people at work spent a lot of time complaining and being negative and saying how they wish they didn't have to be there. And that part was surprising to me. I was like, oh, no one wants to be here. Like, I don't want to be here. Why are we here? This isn't fun. And the other thing is, it was just kind of boring. It's hard for me to kind of sit still, and it wasn't very creative, and my brain needs a lot of like new things, and I like creativity and a lot of energy. And it just felt like having to sit in a seat until 5, even if I got done with work early, I had to sit in that seat every day. I don't know. Something in that just kind of killed a little piece of my soul.
So what did you do to say, all right, what are the steps I need to take to get out of here and land my next opportunity?
Yeah, I was thinking about my role, and I worked cross-functionally a lot with internal partners. So I decided, okay, I want a well-rounded career. For my next experience, let me find a chance to work with external customers, external people. I started telling people I was looking, talking to friends, just started looking on LinkedIn, looking online. And then eventually I interviewed for and landed my next role, which is where we were able to work together. But I was excited because it was in a sales organization. So even though I wasn't necessarily a salesperson selling directly to a customer, I was in a role that allowed me to work with a customer directly. So I was excited to have that external facing experience.
And I believe this is the point where you and I first met.
Yes, that's where our paths crossed.
Absolutely. And Rachel had worked in a different role prior to moving to Minneapolis. So we actually met in Minneapolis. But how did you end up at that employer? Did you know someone there? Did you have any mentors, or did you do any type of networking to land? Did you just apply online?
Yeah. So I had a mentor who had worked there, and I had mentioned like, oh, I think this might be, something I'm interested in. And so that is the way that I found out about like the kind of roles they had and what was available there. So that was kind of my initial interaction with company.
Great. So now you're in a new company, in a new role. And is this the possible dream job?
No, it wasn't. Spoiler alert. Yeah. I'm like, this is going to be the theme of the podcast for today. She did not find her dream job. It was not my dream job. And the thing was, I think from a kind of company culture and the people I worked with, the vibe of the environment, that was a much better fit for me. So I was moving in the right direction and actually met some of my best friends there who, I mean, I keep in touch with more people from that company than any other place I've worked. So wonderful people, wonderful place. Just specific contact I was working with, did not like our team, was not happy about me being a new person on the team. So it was just a challenging environment in that sense, not even from the internal side, but from the external side, which is what I wanted. It was a very challenging situation. I had a hard time with that. I remember one day I was so upset, like I cried in the bathroom. And I think, I talked to friends, and so many people I know have had that experience, but I don't think we really talk about that. But I think it's very normal, especially early on when you're trying to figure stuff out. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want out of work. It can all get overwhelming, and it's okay. Like I definitely shed some tears some days because I just was overwhelmed and didn't know what I was doing and how to figure it out.
So then did you have a mentor or any type of support that helped you do your next rotation at the same organization?
Yeah, so I did. I've always throughout my career, I've had like different mentors. I've had friends. I've had kind of peers at work who've been supporting me. And the good thing is in that role, I got promoted after a year and I was able to move to a new team. And when I tell you that was the best thing ever, I did not, I have to tell you, and I know you live there, but I did not like living in Minneapolis, Kindra. That
I
part.
mean, it's hard from a girl who grew up in the South to come to the Minnesota winter. So I can understand. I
Yes.
understand.
Yes. There are
Fair
some
enough.
great people who live there like you, but I did not like that part of the job. I actually ended up in my next role having the best manager in my career and having a really incredible experience. So I was happy I stuck it out and stayed. And then I had people and mentors who were supporting me and pushing me along and, just encouraging me throughout that.
Doesn't that just make a huge difference? Like, you may not be as energized by the work, or it could be meh,
Yeah.
but I feel like if you have the right manager, the right team, the right support, then it makes you feel like, gosh, I can accomplish just about anything. I mean, obviously, you have to like some of the work because we spend a lot of hours working, but you could love the work and hate the manager, and then that just doesn't work either.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to look at the full package, but I feel like it's better to, work with and for great people because you're going to have hard times in any business at some point. So when those hard times come, if you're surrounded by incredible people, it just makes it easier to get through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now you're in Minnesota. You're on your second rotation with the organization. And what's next?
Yeah. So I had my second rotation. At that point, I realized, like, oh, I see what my manager is doing. And I had a few different managers, but the last one I had was a few levels above me. And I said, I don't think that's the role I want to work towards. So, what is there for me to do? I started meeting with people across different areas of the company. So, I met with finance person, marketing,
Mm-hmm.
operations, HR. I know we talked about
Yep.
what you do in talent acquisition. And I realized I was already volunteering on a recruiting team to go help recruit
Mm-hmm.
people for my role. I was on a committee that was planning development events for my peers. And I realized, oh, I'm already doing so many of the things that are HR focused. My friends come to me with manager problems. Maybe I should just get paid for the things I do for free on the side, other job. Yeah. So I started applying for HR roles while I was there, and no one wanted to hire me because I didn't have experience. So I decided to go back to school, and I went back to school to study HR management.
I very much remember this conversation. And I said, Rachel, are you sure you want to go into HR? Now,
You
talent
did?
acquisition is one area. And I get the fun part of HR, of hiring and giving the offers, and it just looks glamorous. There's a whole nother side as an HR business partner, as a generalist, where it gets real because you may be coaching people outside of the organization. You may be managing issues with employee relations, all kinds of things that are just not the glamorous side. And some people love it. But I was like, Rachel, I just want you to go into this wide open. You remember that conversation?
I don't. And I think I probably selectively put it out of my brain because you were giving me information that was not aligned with what I wanted to hear. No.
I'm like, Rachel, you're so nice. Are you going to be able to fire somebody if you have to be a generalist? Are you sure you can handle that?
You're giving a spoiler alert. So my first HR BP role, HR business partner role, was not my dream job either. And
Of course.
you warned me. But yeah, I did not listen and I decided to switch it to HR. And I don't think I fully understood what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm in the role I'm in, I think, which there were plenty of roles in between, but now I'm like, okay, I'm doing the work that is aligned with who I am. But it took a few roles to get here. So I appreciate you being honest with me and sharing like just that open feedback on what it's really like.
Mm-hmm.
And, even going back to school, I don't think that's the right move for everyone. But for me, the reason
Mm-hmm.
why it was easier to make that decision is because I got a fellowship and was able to get my tuition fully covered for the program.
Yeah.
That made it easier for me to say, like, this is worth it versus going into, however much all the debt, 5, 6 figures of debt.
Oh, yeah. Because grad school, you got to be serious if this is what you want to do because it is not cheap. But
No.
kudos to you for getting that fellowship and I did warn Rachel, but I also knew she was going to make a decision for her. And I was super supportive and we kept in contact. And so then you landed a role once you finished grad school. So now you're into HR. Tell us about this journey on what you've discovered post grad school.
Yeah, so I was an HR business partner at an oil and gas company post grad school. And it's funny because coming out of grad school, I said, I'm not going to a big corporation. I'd always worked for really large, kind of Fortune 500 companies. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to work for a small company. I'm going to give back. I went to grad school, got an internship with a big company, and then got an offer from a big company. And that's what I did. So I worked in oil and gas as an HR business partner for my first role. And I supported geoscientists and geophysicists. So it was really interesting to work with that group of people who had a skill set that's so different from my own. And I learned a lot because the thing about HR, which I don't think most people realize, is when you're a business partner, depending on how the company is structured, you can start off pretty early in your career sitting in on some high level leadership meetings.
Absolutely.
With the client group that you support. So then you go from I went from being like an associate to sitting in the leadership meetings with all the directors and senior directors. And at times, sometimes a VP is in the meeting. And that was such a big shift, but it was very eye-opening. And working with leaders at the higher level was different. It was a different experience. It was new for me and it taught me a lot, but it wasn't something I initially expected or knew would happen. But I think it was a great learning and growth opportunity. What I realized, though, is most of the work I did, there was not a right or wrong way to do a lot of it. People would say, well, you could do this or you could do this or maybe this outside of, those core policies or things where you have to follow a certain way of doing things. There's a lot that's in the gray area. I had to figure out how to navigate ambiguity in a way I hadn't before. So that was hard. And I ended up, the company that I was at was restructuring how they did HR. And it was super, super corporate, more than I had experienced in the past. And I just felt like it wasn't the best fit. They were restructuring HR in a way that I didn't think I wanted to grow my career. So I ended up getting a call from someone who I worked with when I had my internship in grad school, because I ended up going to a different company. And so they were like, how are you feeling about work? Would you be open to coming over? And it was perfect timing because that's when I wanted to start looking. And I said, yep, I'm coming over. So that's what I did. And I hopped over to a different company. I was still in Texas, but it was a different company and, had a much larger group of people. I actually had 3 different groups that I supported. So it was, again, like I didn't have a manager when I started. I was just kind of thrown in with this huge group and it was quite an experience, quite a ride.
One thing that I've noticed as you're sharing your journey, kind of a theme that I've picked up on with you, Rachel, is a couple of things. One, I definitely admire and respect your ability to just put yourself out there, try things, see what you like, what you don't like. If not, you're like, I can go find another job elsewhere. And I don't mean it in the sense that, you're a job hopper, but you're able to just pick your own path, right? You're not following someone else's path. And I appreciate that because I think a lot of times, as we talked about earlier, like, why be a doctor? Well, because you kind of know what to expect. But I didn't want to tell people I wanted to be an editor because there was no written path or I didn't know which way to go. And then here you are. Now this is like a full circle moment. You have, in your journey, in your career journey, have created your own path. You're not following this imposter syndrome, like we all came in together. Now this person's here and I've got to, keep up with them because they've gotten promoted. I see that happen a lot, especially working for a large organization. And so I appreciate that you're like, nope, I'm just going to stay in my lane and find out what works for me. The second thing that I would say that I've taken away from this is that you really know how to utilize your network. And every time that you've moved roles, yes, of course, you have to go through, the application process to get you hired in the system. But you've used a lot of networking to find out about different opportunities, which I don't think most people know that and the importance of networking, but never underestimate it. Someone mentioned to me the other day, like, do you think there'll be a time where resumes will go away? And I go, hadn't thought about it. Because they said, throughout a stat of whatever percent of people find, their next opportunity to networking. Do you think there's some truth to that?
That's interesting you said that because I actually talked to someone else who was in talent acquisition last week and they said the same thing, that they predict resumes may go away because a variety of reasons. But yeah, there's so many. We use LinkedIn too, which is another reason they gave. But it's funny because I appreciate your like insights and reflections because I don't think I've taken the time to really think through the changes I've made and where I've ended up. But I do think every job, except for maybe one of my full-time working career post undergrad, there's been some component of that involved. Yeah. I never thought about it or planned it that way, but that is true. I think that's where a lot of us are going and how we get connected to things. And it is important. I don't even know if I've been that intentional about it. Like it accidentally worked out that way, but it is important for me even now. So now I'm in a role. I work for a startup and the entire company has less than 200 people, which is so different from any other work experience I've had. And it has kind of changed, how I think about work and all of that. So in my current role, I don't have anyone else doing the same role as me at the company. So I've had to build my own external network of people who we just talk about projects we're working on or what are your challenges? And okay, we're all dealing with the same challenge. How can we all come together and kind of help each other deal with this? Or how do we support each other knowing we're all the only ones doing our same role? So now I think networking has evolved for me. And it doesn't have to be something you do just when you're looking for a job. Like for me, it's been filling some of the gaps, like where I can't get that experience of talking to peers who are doing the same thing at my company. I've created that community outside of my company. And it's been really fun to see that community grow and to expand my network in the tech space because that's new for me. And so I think constantly connecting with people, being curious, and just getting to know people. And, when the time is right and you are looking for opportunities, you tell people, some of those doors just naturally will start to open from a network that you've already built before you even, needed to ask someone. So you don't have to, I know it was hard for me to think about networking when I was younger because I'm like, I don't want to just talk to someone because I need something from them. But now I've evolved and I'm like, that's not why I get to know people. I genuinely am just curious, or I think we have the same challenge or we have a similar interest. So now I've kind of evolved to just creating this great community of people I enjoy.
Which is, in essence, what networking is about. It's not just when I need something.
Yes.
It's got to be relationship, right? Like it's got to be a two-way street. It's not something that's super transactional. And I appreciate that. So thank you for that. You actually answered my next question, which is, what have you learned on this journey and where you're at? And you've just highlighted some of those areas. And so now I'll ask you, what's next for Rachel? Do you think you'll be in this role for a while, or what are you thinking you might want to do next?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that question. I just had this conversation earlier today with a mentor of mine on, what's next for me. And I'll give you the same answer that I gave him, is that I feel like right now in life, I'm in between this place of like, what has been is done. And even coming out of COVID with my personal life, not just professionally, I feel like so much of how life was, I know like that part of it is over, but I don't really know what's next. I don't have the full picture of what's to come. So I feel like I'm in this in between. I'm in a spot where I don't have a clear picture of what exactly is next for me or what I have to have next. But I just know I've been focused right now on like, what skills am I building? Am I learning what I want to learn right now? And maybe what are some things that I'm curious about learning that I don't have the opportunity to learn? So I think that's how I'm approaching the current moment. I like the work I'm doing. I like the things I'm working on. And doing this podcast, I'll also do workshops and some speaking on the side and some writing too. And that stuff is starting to pick up a little bit. So I think it's fun to explore this creative part of my brain and just see how I can continue to support and cultivate that.
Yes, absolutely. Important to enjoy the moment. Even as I asked that question, like, what's next? It was also like, ooh, should I have asked that question? Because I think sometimes we get so, especially people that are very career focused, they're in a role and they're constantly thinking about what's next instead of enjoying the moment and doing exactly what you just said, which is to gain all the skills that you have. It's okay to just be, right? Like enjoy it and everything will happen the way that it's supposed to happen.
Yes, that is the key, I think, to any career journey is that Yes, I'm a planner, and I think a lot of us like to plan things, but at the end of the day, life is just going to happen. So make your plans, but hold them pretty loosely because there's just so much that's going to come that you can't plan for. And I know I usually ask guests when they come on the podcast, how do you recharge? Because this is, working is a lot of work. Life is a lot of work right now. So, what are
Mm-hmm.
some things that you do to fill your cup? So, I'd love to hear your answer to that.
Absolutely. If there was anything that I have learned over the last 2 years, especially going into the pandemic, as you had just previously mentioned, you can have all these plans, but then life happens, things that are beyond your control that can happen. And so one of the positive things that I think for me personally that came out of COVID was it forced me to slow down and just be present. I worked a ton, always busy, a super social person, but I learned how to recharge. Well, one, because we were essentially on a lockdown.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I was like, I got to get back to what can I do to recharge? Because I know it sounds cliche to say you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, that is true.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've
true.
had points in my life where I've actually burned myself out because I was just going. I was literally burning myself on both ends, both in my career and personally. And then I just shut down and I'm like, oh, I don't ever want to do that. So that is a big thing that I learned in the pandemic. But what I say, a few things that I like to do to recharge. And anybody who follows me on Instagram or my friends will know, like, I am the queen of self care. So I was like, let me get back to that. I was really into it for a while, but stepped away. So, what does self care look like for me? I took a lot of walks in
Yeah.
the pandemic. There are times now where I'm like, oh, I just got a lot going on. Work is coming at me. You know what? Work will be here when I get back. I'm going to step away from my computer. The sun is shining. I need to get some vitamin D. I need to get some fresh air. I'm going to go for a walk, even if it's a quick 20, 30-minute walk. So, that's one thing that I like to do. And it costs you absolutely nothing. You can put your AirPods in and go for a walk or just listen to music or just listen to nature. So that always helps me and it's a mood booster for me. The other thing that I do because I work from home primarily and I'm not used to sitting as much because before when we were in the office, I was moving around our corporate office a lot and it is a big campus. So I go get monthly massages and that's my chance to like decompress. My massage therapist reminds me, like a lot of people, I carry a lot of my stress and my tension in my neck. So that kind of helps gets me aligned. I may do yoga. I may say no social media. I'm not taking any calls. I'm just going to sit here on the couch and binge on Netflix. Whatever brings me joy in that moment, that's what I do. But I have to do something for myself on a daily basis. So another way I kind of recharge and get myself going is I'm an early riser. So I like to get up and work out before work because otherwise, by the time I end the workday, I feel like my time is not mine anymore
Yeah.
because I'm so exhausted. So working out for me, while yes, I'm burning calories and it takes energy, it's actually a recharger. I get a chance to
Yeah.
clear my head and get energized. And so I work out at home. I have a spin bike, so I may, go for a ride or I may do some no impact weightlifting, whatever it is, whatever brings me joy that day, that's what I do.
Oh, I love that you said what brings me joy that day or what brings me joy in that moment because I think it looks different from time to time and depending on what's going on. So I love that you are flexible in what you need and you're honest with yourself about what you need. And for all the listeners, Kindra is the fitness guru, by the way. So I know she talked about just a workout or a walk. She works out like every day and is so committed. And I'm really impressed with her commitment to her health via nutritious food and working out. So that is great to hear that you're keeping those habits going.
I appreciate that, Rachel. The other piece that I don't think I share enough on my social media about my workouts is actually good for my mental health.
True. Yeah. Working out
Mm-hmm.
is good for mental and physical. And I think you touched on a lot of those things like mental health, physical health, spiritual health, emotional health. The examples you gave kind of crossed all those lines of like, there are different areas of your life that you
Mm-hmm.
have to refill for. And so, yeah, I think what you do will also change depending on which bucket needs to be filled up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Rachel, what do you do to recharge?
Yeah, so we have somewhat similar list. So I'm a big walker. I like to walk usually every day, but this week I was traveling all last week, so I've not been walking this week. But usually I walk. I like yoga. I love to have a meal with someone I love, whether that's friends,
Mm-hmm.
family. That is one of my favorite things to do in life. And I do like a little bit of reality TV. Don't judge me, but
Oh no, I'm right there with you. I am
okay.
right there with you. Judge
Yes.
free zone.
So just watching something that kind of lets me turn my brain off can feel really
Mm-hmm.
good. And when I'm being really good, which I haven't been lately, I like to read a good book. So that's something
Same.
else
Same.
that makes me so happy. So yeah, I'm like, I feel like we have very similar lists, which is why we probably get along.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Kendra, you are a great interviewer and host. I'm like, man, like you should have a podcast. You're so good at this. And I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time, spending time with us today. So there will be a part 2 where we talk about why I started the podcast. But thank you everyone for tuning in to the Career Creator podcast today. And if you haven't already, check out our website, check out Instagram, and follow along.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Career Creator podcast. If you want to sign up for our email newsletter or keep in touch, please visit our website, www.thecareercreatorpodcast.com, also linked in the show notes. Appreciate you joining us, and always remember, your next move doesn't have to be your last move.